There are several answers to that question. One of them would be then get online.
Sometimes I get customers asking me to do mobile applications, but they want them to be developed for the Android and iOS platforms. And usually I recommend building web applications instead. So I think we should discuss a little bit on the thoughts behind why you should pick one or why you should pick the other. What do you say about that?
I think that actually the difference is not so large anymore as it used to be. I mean, for 5 years ago, it was obvious whether you were working with a so-called native application or whether you were working with a web application. Yeah. You could very, very easily tell the difference, and it would native applications tend to look better than web applications. But the point is that when you, for instance, when you're doing the sort of business application or administrative applications, instead of like computer games or technical things, you know, there isn't that much going on the screen. For instance, if you work with an iPhone and you do this trick as where you link it to the it's not a desktop, to the screen, whatever it's called, when you sort of make a link directly into the application.
Yeah.
So when you press the button on the screen, you know, it will start the application. Sometimes it can be very hard to see that it isn't a native application. Yeah. But the point here is that whether or not it's a native application, you don't want the data to be on the phone. You want the data to be on the server for these kinds of applications anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but when you look like that, you say, well, what if you're offline?
That's one of the applications we made, yeah.
Yeah, that's one situation.
Yeah.
What if you're offline? There are several answers to that question. One of them would be then get online.
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, we solved it by using the IndexedDB, which is a browser-based database that you can access using JavaScript.
Yeah. But the web app, when you can do it, has, as you hinted before, the enormous advantage that it will work on every device.
Yeah, and you only have one code base to update.
Yes, and the trend is also for desktop apps that you code them to work in a browser so that you can run it anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, and some of them actually write it for the browser and then use some kind of, is it called PhoneGap?
PhoneGap, for instance, yes.
Yeah.
That would give you access to the hardware. For instance, if you want to access the NFC reader on your phone,
yeah,
you can't do it from a web app, as far as I know.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet, at least. No, but you know, it used to be like that with the camera.
Yeah.
But then that changed. So you could use PhoneGap, and PhoneGap, of course, you could use a web app, and then you could PhoneGap for it Android or for iPhone.
Yeah.
So yes, that was one possibility. But PhoneGap is some kind of a browser, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you run
browser with additional features.
Yeah.
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 So when you want to make a native application, that is, if you want to make a game, or if you want to use specific features of the phone, or if you want some real-time kind of execution on the phone. But if you are making an application where you have this administrative tool where you access the information on a server, then you might as well go with a web application that is designed to work on the phone, right?
I was just thinking, what kind of applications do you have to go to work with native? And the first thing I thought about was text processing or things like that. But then I realized, no, Google's made that to web applications as well, you know, spreadsheets and word processing and that. So that works on the web as well.
Yeah.
And more, as far as I know, computer games will work as web apps too, actually.
Yeah, you can run a lot of games and more games as a web app on the browser using JavaScript and stuff like that, but you won't be able to access the full hardware that you can do. You can actually do virtual reality in the browser today, but I would probably opt for making that work in native to gain access to the full hardware.
And you got these platforms now, like Chromebooks, for instance.
Yeah.
I think Windows got something similar. They got some hardware that works in a similar way. You know, that has to have the internet, and that's how they work, basically.
Yeah, Windows seems to have a little bit different approach. They are actually enabling you to build Windows applications using web components like JavaScript and HTML and execute them directly in Windows. So they kind of have this internal server application. I don't know. Whilst Chromebooks basically is a browser,
Yeah.
so you cannot execute programs directly on there, even though they have apps for that as well. But they are made to run like a browser, more or less.
But that will be sufficient for most people, won't it?
Yeah.
I mean, because ordinary books, you know, for what do you use a computer? Well, you go on the internet to check the news, to check your mail, to see the television, the news, or whatever program you want to see.
I even helped my son set up a development environment on a Chromebook.
Yeah.
Just installing the editor Caret, and that's an app that you can run on Chromebook.
Yeah.
And then you have an ID, so you can type HTML and JavaScript and write your own programs.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Smart. So also the need for specific development devices gets less and less. I mean,
yeah. I've built an app for Android and iOS, but that was primarily because I wanted to have access to the message API on the phone so that I could send push messages. You can do that in the browser, but it will only work if the browser is on. And there are some other issues with that setup, but it is possible to enable push notifications from the browser directly, but it is not as good and fluent as it is running a native app. So that is one of the reasons I've built native apps for Android and iOS, only for the push notification.
I've done something similar, but well, the question is native or native, because I've been programming mobile devices with Java.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a Java ME mobile edition.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago, yes. But that was before the smartphones.
Yeah.
So instead of sending text messages, you send records. That's a way that was a way that you could make back and forth data transmission some 18, 20 years.
Then you would still have the SMS
yes,
working. So you use the SMS layer, or what do you call it?
Precisely. Yeah. They had something they called a wireless API,
okay,
which also actually made it possible to configure a virtual port on the mobile device, so that you could send an SMS to the port, so that it would be directly intercepted by a piece of software written by you.
Mm.
And then the OS would start up the application automatically.
Yeah.
So you could use, for instance, you could use it in sending an alert message that needs, and I mean, the problem is that if you get an alert and you want to answer, I am doing something about this. Now you can send an SMS back saying, okay, I've seen it, I will do this, you know. The problem is that if you send an SMS back, it doesn't go to a person, but to a server. You need a specifically formatted message. Then the SMS typed by someone is not an ideal thing. So if you had a program that would wake up and say, hey, move your ass, and you would press a button saying, okay, I'm moving my ass, and then the message will go back to the server with you, without actually you having to write anything or do anything, just press the button. I've seen the message.
Yeah.
That could be automated at that time. But now you can do all that with a web app, basically.
Yeah.
So the need for all these things, for all these very smart and very funny things to code, you know, it's getting lesser and lesser. And they become more and more, they work more and more like generating computers, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's quite enough for this video. Fantastic. So hope to see you next week, and comment if you have anything to add to the conversation, and we might pick it up in some later video. And see you next week.